So welcome everyone. We're glad you've joined us today to learn more about the new soft skills assessment tool that's being released by Literacy Link South Central. My name is Summer Burton and I'll be your host today. We have about 30 minutes of information to share, but have scheduled some extra time to be sure we can discuss any of the questions that you may have about the assessment, about how to use it, or just about anything else. So before we begin, I want to let you know that we are recording this session so we can share it with those who weren't able to attend today. It will be posted on our website in early March, along with the assessment tool and the guidebook. And look, we're already in early March, so you know it's coming fast. We'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Employment Ontario and the Ministry of Labour Training and Skills Development. This assessment was created as part of an Ontario Labour Market Partnership project that was funded by the ministry, and we appreciate their ongoing support. With that said, the views expressed in today's presentation are those of Literacy Link South Central and do not necessarily reflect those of the province. The Government of Ontario and its agencies are in no way bound by the recommendations we're sharing today. Which makes me say, what are we sharing today? First, we'll share a bit of information about Literacy Link South Central and the project that led us to creating the soft skills assessment tool. Then we'll get into the tool itself, how and why it was developed, what you need to know about administering and scoring it, and finally, how to interpret the results of the scoring. As a thank you to the employers and service providers that are attending today's session, you're being given a sneak peek at the assessment tool, the guidebook, and the scoring package. They're going to be added as a downloadable copy to the chat right now. You may find it useful to open a copy of both the assessment tool and the guidebook so that you can look at them when we talk about how they're being used. Speaking of the chat, we welcome you to use that chat to ask questions. I'm being supported on today's webinar by my coworker, Jeremy, who's going to be keeping his eye on the chat. I'll try to remember to check in with him a couple of times during the session to see if anything urgent's popped up, and then we'll review and discuss any questions at the end of the session as well. Now, one question that I know people will have is if they can get a copy of the slides from today, and yes, you can. We'll go ahead and put them in the chat shortly if they're not there already. So our organization is a regional literacy network, and we support adult literacy and essential skills upgrading programs in 6 counties. That's Brant, Haldimand, Norfolk, Elgin, Oxford, and Middlesex. Ontario's adult literacy programs offer free training to help people develop stronger reading, writing, computer, math and communication, and other essential skills, and we work to help them. We're responsible for coordinating and planning literacy services in those areas, providing professional development for literacy professionals, sharing information about the impacts of literacy skills on employability, independence, educational attainment, and a lot more. One thing you'll always find us doing is running projects that specifically address current needs in the communities we serve. And that's where our soft skills assessment comes in. The project that led us to create this tool is focused on the manufacturing sector, in large part because the local labor market information we have access to makes it clear that manufacturing employers are struggling to find people to fill entry-level positions. Compounding the issue is that many of the applicants they do get don't have the soft skills they need to be successful in the job. They may get through the interview process and even start working, but their communication, reliability, work ethic, or decision-making skills mean they don't stay employed for long. Being able to assess those skills before someone starts a job would help not only support employers in finding applicants that are a good fit, but also help skills upgrading programs know exactly what kind of training to offer job seekers so they can be successful at work. Through our research, we've discovered that there isn't a quick, simple, reliable, and valid tool that would do exactly what we wanted. There are many excellent assessments that take a while to administer, incur a fee to use, or were focused on a broader range of skills than we were looking at, and nothing specific to the manufacturing sector. So we analyzed the available assessments, learned what worked well and what didn't, and developed a customized tool specifically meant to assess the 8 soft skills that are most desired by manufacturing employers. The choice of skills was based on current research into the most critical soft skills for employment and a series of one-on-one interviews with local manufacturers to get their input. So without further ado, here is the list of soft skills that we're looking at. Organizational skills, attitude, dependability, adaptability, communication, teamwork, problem solving, and being detail-oriented. And I'd like to get your input here. What other terms have you heard or used to describe the kinds of skills that I just mentioned? We use the term soft skills, but absolutely know that not everyone refers to them the same way. If you can please use the chat to respond, and I'll check in with Jeremy to hear some of those terms and phrases in a moment. Before I do, I'll mention that we're putting together several other things in the scope of the project that you may find interesting. We're putting a plan to better connect Ontario's adult literacy programs with manufacturing employers and manufacturing training programs, for example. We're also developing new resources that literacy programs can use to promote manufacturing careers to their employment-bound learners. For more information about these efforts, we welcome you to visit our website using the link that's shown on your screen. That link will be added to the chat as well by Jeremy. And speaking of Jeremy, are there any suggested terms in the chat that you could share with me?
Certainly. So there's a number of good ones here. We have people skills, we have workplace skills, we have work habits, we also have appropriate language, punctuality, good hygiene.
Awesome. So getting into some of what the people skills, the employability skills, the workplace skills could mean even beyond what we've put here in our top 8 list. That's great.
Yes. And it's been mentioned too that in the past these have also been referred to as essential skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I'll check in here while I have a moment to say, are we okay with uploading all of our assessment tools?
Yes, they were all uploaded without difficulty.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So as I mentioned earlier, we've done a lot of research, and it's the result of that research that led us to developing the assessment the way that we have. So it's in 2 parts. The first is called the Life Assessment Questionnaire, and we're going to get into that in just a second. I want to show you kind of what that package looks like, because you've had the chance to hopefully download it now. So you should have 3 things. We've got the manufacturing skills assessment itself. Then we also have a guidebook, which is the opportunity for you not only to learn more about how this project was put together, as you will on today's webinar, but also to score and learn more about the specific skills that are being measured within this package. So for each person whose soft skills you plan to evaluate, you're going to need to print a copy of the manufacturing skills assessment itself and also of the scoring package. So the scoring package is also embedded in that guidebook. It's in there twice. So you've got it separately and you've got it within the Assessing Soft Skills for Jobs in Manufacturing guidebook. We found that extracting that into a separate document makes it easier for printing, which is why you have it twice. So you can use it in whatever way works best for you. So the 2 parts of the assessment itself, the first is called a Life Effectiveness Questionnaire. It's an assessment that's proven to be both reliable and valid, which means that the results are a realistic reflection of someone's actual skills, and it produces consistent results regardless of who administers it. The LEQ portion of the assessment presents 24 statements, each of which is aligned to a specific soft skill. The person doing the assessment is asked to read each statement and then indicate how much it sounds like a description of them. They indicate their reaction to each statement on a scale of 1 for false or not like me to 8 for true or like me. I've provided an example of the first 4 statements in the LEQ portion of the assessment so you can get a sense of how they sound. And I encourage you to look at the full list of statements in the copy of the soft skills assessment that you've downloaded from the chat. The Life Effectiveness Questionnaire, or LEQ, is a pre-created, validated assessment tool. which means that we use it exactly as it is presented without changing any of the language. Were we to change the language within this assessment, it would devalidate the tool. So one of the questions that has come up, and one of the reasons I put number 4 on this screen in particular, is what if the people that are using this assessment don't know what some of these words mean? Can we reword them into more simple language? The straightforward answer is no, please don't reword them. Because again, one of the benefits of this particular tool is that it's been proven through hundreds and hundreds of research papers to be a valid, reliable tool. However, what we've done with one of the groups that is using this with their employees is have provided an explanation sheet of how you may be able to explain what certain words mean in advance. So we've put words like adaptable, for example, in plain language and provided a tip sheet. Adaptable means, and then providing an example. I don't have it in front of me, so I won't guess at what we wrote, but it gives you an idea of a little tip sheet that somebody can read in advance. And then if when they see a specific statement or question, they're not sure what it means, they can go back and reference that. So the second part of the assessment is a situational judgment test, or SJT. It describes 9 real-life workplace situations and asks the person reading them to choose how they would respond. Now, what makes this assessment particularly interesting is that it provides 4 different responses and asks them to choose both the actions they would be most likely to take and the ones they would be least likely to take. The scenarios are written to look at behavioral tendencies. In other words, what someone would be likely to do, rather than their knowledge of the correct action to take, what someone should do. And as a result, it provides more valid responses. Now, to ensure the authenticity of these SJT scenarios, we worked with representatives from the manufacturing sector in our area to identify common workplace issues and how they've seen employees respond to them. They also shared what they'd most and least like to see employees do in these scenarios, which helped us develop the scoring for this section of the assessment, which we'll look at shortly. I've provided an example of one of the scenarios on the screen, along with each of the possible response options. Now, from the person being assessed's point of view, that's it. The assessment is only a couple of pages long. It contains 24 statements and 9 scenarios to review. For most people, it takes no more than 15 minutes, but please remember, it could vary depending on the language and literacy levels of the individual. So while the language of the tool, particularly that life effectiveness questionnaire statements, cannot be modified without damaging the validity of the tool, remember that there are ways that we can support the understanding of people that can take that assessment. Now that we've seen the assessment itself, let's look at how you score it. This is where the soft skills assessment tool scoring sheet from the assessment scoring package, it's also attachment B in the guidebook, comes in handy. So across the top of the scoring sheet, you'll see the 8 soft skills that we're measuring. Below each soft skill, you'll see 2 columns. One indicates the life effectiveness questionnaire statement number or situational judgment test scenario number, and the other is blank. It's in that blank column that you'll record the score the person received on that particular statement or scenario. You'll see that there are between 3 and 5 opportunities to measure each of the 8 soft skills we're evaluating here. By adding the scores that are recorded in each soft skill column here, you'll get a total evaluation score for that specific skill. Once each of the soft skills columns have been added up, you can total them in the space provided on the far right for an overall soft skills score out of a maximum of 264. So that raises the question of where you get the scores to put in those columns, right? The scores for the first part of the assessment, the life effectiveness questionnaire, are pretty easy. The number the person circles on that scale of 1 to 8 is the score they receive for that statement. So, using the example on the screen, this person gets 4 points for statement number 1, 6 points for statement number 2, 2 points for statement number 3, and 8 points for statement number 4. This is what that would look like on the scoring sheet. What soft skill each statement relates to is clearly outlined in the guidebook, but we can also tell by looking at the column headings. Statement 1 was related to organizational skills. Statement 2 and 4 looked at adaptability, and Statement 3 focused on teamwork. To score the second part of the assessment, the situational judgment test scenarios, you'll need the scoring key you can find in the assessment scoring package. It's also included as attachment A in the guidebook. That scoring key shows you how each of the possible responses is weighted. And because you print a copy of this document to score each person's assessment, you can simply circle the scores they've earned and then add them up for each scenario. Let's look at the example on your screen. On the left is a completed scenario. Look at which response number this person chose as the most likely thing they would do. According to the most likely column in the scoring key on the right, anyone choosing answer 4 as the most likely earns 2 points. Back on the left, we see this person chose the first statement as the thing they'd be least likely to do. If we look at the scoring key on the right, the least likely column shows us that choosing option 1 as least likely earns 2 points as well. That means the total score for this scenario is 4 out of 8. Once you've scored all 9 scenarios, transfer them to the scoring sheet just as you did with the scores for the first part of the assessment. It will look something like this. You can see that all of the LEQ statements have been scored in the columns closer to the top of the scoring sheet, and each of the 9 SJT scenarios have been scored in the appropriate place near the bottom. All that's left to do is add those scores up. As I mentioned when we first looked at the scoring sheet, start by adding up the scores received in each of the 6 columns. Then add those scores to come up with a total overall score out of 264, the maximum number of points that could be achieved for the entire assessment. But how do we interpret that number and the others that we've recorded? Most employers will be looking for people who score at least 50% or higher on the soft skills being measured. That said, soft skills are not one size fits all. While the research we did and the manufacturers we worked with led us to these particular skills, some employers may value them less than others. For example, while one employer may feel comfortable with staff who score lower in teamwork and communication, as long as they score highly in organizational skills and being detail-oriented, another employer may feel exactly the opposite. For that reason, we encourage anyone administering this assessment to really think about which of those 8 soft skills they value most in their company. It is entirely within your power to say that for you, anyone receiving lower than, say, 30 out of 40 in adaptability will not be a good fit for your ever-changing workplace. One thing that we think is really important to address is what to do if someone ends up with a very low score, either in the overall assessment or in one or more specific skill. If you're administering this assessment in a skills training environment, like a literacy and basic skills program or employment services, you may already have access to soft skills training material to help. There are also many employment-focused programs like Skills Advance Ontario happening across the province, and most emphasize soft skills development as part of their curriculum. If you need advice on referrals or access to soft skills training material for your program, we encourage you to reach out to us for a conversation about where you can find it. If you're an employer using this assessment as part of the hiring process and someone's soft skills are not strong enough for an entry-level job at your business, you have a couple of options. First, consider which skills the applicant scored lower in and whether they are a make it or break it for your organization. Also, look at whether you're able to invest in training to increase this person's skills in lower scoring areas. That could include arranging for on-the-job training to help employees build their skills, or recommending free soft skills training programs to employees and making it possible for them to attend. If you're not in a position to do that, you may choose not to hire them. Because they've expressed an interest in working for your company, when you let them know they will not be proceeding to employment, we hope you'll recommend opportunities for improvement. Candidates may return to you for consideration once they've attended training to build their soft skills, if they know what skills they need to develop. Much like I said to our employment and training partners, if you would like advice on referrals to local programs that can help those unsuccessful candidates increase their skills, we hope you'll reach out to us. And how can we do that, Summer? I'm glad you asked. We've included our contact information on the screen, and we welcome you to get in touch. Like many people, we are working remotely right now, but are checking email and voicemail messages daily. I'd like to draw your attention to a link on the screen, and it's one that Jeremy will be posting to the chat shortly. It is a link to a very quick 4-question survey we put together to hear your thoughts, both about the assessment tool and today's session. We would really appreciate it if you could take just a moment to fill it out. While you click the link to access that survey, I will check in on your questions. So Jeremy, can you let me know if there are any comments or questions that we should respond to?
Yes, we were asked, can you read the questionnaire aloud to the participant?
We don't believe that that damages the validity of it at all, as long as you can maintain a straight face. So making sure that you don't give away what you think is the proper answer to the question, then absolutely, that's a question we've been asked, and we talked about it with our research team.
And that was the question. That's the one question that's on there for now.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. Well, we will give you a couple more minutes to think about any questions that you may have to access that feedback session feedback survey. There we go. I found the word. And also to make sure that you've downloaded your copy of the assessment tool itself, the guidebook, and the separate scoring package. A quick reminder that we do have a copy of today's presentation in that chat as well for download. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and let anybody who wants to unmute and pop up do so.